Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Hello, this is John Matson in Salt Lake City, Utah.
And this is Roy Fillmore in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Ooh, changing up the name already.
That's
Good
right.
job. Anyway, this is episode 2 of JR Watches Star Trek for the first time. But
We're video broadcasting live, but no one cares.
no one cares. No one cares except for the people we boot off anyway. But last week we went over the first 9 episodes. First 9 episodes of first season. So hopefully, we were hoping to finish the first season today, but I don't know. If we do 9 episodes a day, a week, or a show is what I should be saying, it's going to take 3 episodes just to get through the first season.
Yeah.
So
And oddly enough,
unless we hurry.
Yeah, oddly enough, even though we went through the first 9 episodes, we still haven't seen the pilot. But we'll talk about it today.
Oddly enough. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. First episode this week. Episode 10, the Corbomite Maneuver.
Yeah, one of my least favorite episodes of the entire season.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned, I talked to you about this a little bit last week, but I remember really liking this episode. I thought it was kind of cool, but that was a long time ago.
Well,
because the Enterprise bumps into like a big blockade in the middle of space, and they can't figure out how to get past it because it just follows them around or something like that.
yeah, I guess you can call it a blockade, but really it's a giant beach ball. Maybe a little more cubey, but yeah, it's a giant. Budget wasn't very high that week. Special effect, and they not only can they not get past it, they can't shoot it, and they can't even back up from it because, well, they're just going nowhere.
Would it help, do you think, if they actually turn the ship around instead of just backing up? You'd think the speed of the ship backing up wouldn't really be that fast.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if the way they do it on the show, it's like they can go just as fast in reverses and forward, but as we've all tried in our car, which reminds me that I reversed in a car with you in it once, and I blinded you for a solid 20 hours, I think.
Oh, yeah, that was good times.
Yeah.
Formaldehyde in the face.
Yeah. So I don't know. So it didn't work, but so the problem is what this cube thing is. Is the cube itself actually a ship? I think it is. I don't know, but it's this alien being who you only see through fuzzy images, and he's got this weird looking blue face, and after this episode it's in all the credits for future episodes.
Mm-hmm. Which is my favorite. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And also, I may add, and I'm going to make you watch this, but in the Star Trek Futurama episode, it was also in the credits to that.
Oh, there you go.
Which was pretty awesome.
So what?
Wow, I just had the biggest macaroni burp ever.
So what happens? This alien tells him that he's gonna destroy the ship, right? I can't remember his reasoning for deciding to destroy the Enterprise, but he's just gonna do it.
Was he like, you're trespassing, is that it?
No, I don't know. It's one of those lesser organism sort of things. I think it's we've stumbled upon you and we've researched you, and you guys are all you do is destroy things and kill other people, so to prevent you from killing other people, we're going to kill you. I think it was one of those sort of deals.
One of these days, a higher race than that ought to say to them, all you guys do is take races that kill people and then you kill them, and so for that reason, we're going to kill you.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So what happens is Kirk comes up with a brilliant plan. Now this is interesting because it introduces a new human game to Spock, and I'll let you explain, John.
He says, Spock, being the logical person he is, he goes, the game is over. The game is chess. He has all the pieces. There's nothing we can do. And then Kirk says, oh, you stupid logical alien. Game is never over for us humans because the game isn't poker. The game isn't chess. I gave it away. I knew I should have let you handle this.
The game isn't chess, it's poker, right?
Game isn't chess, it's poker.
So
yeah, and we can bluff our way out of this because we're awesome poker players.
Yeah, Kirk's bluffing. So what's the bluff? The bluff is he says that the ship is filled with corbomite, which is a fictional material that any ship that destroys the Enterprise will be destroyed by the corbomite. It's kind of like a doomsday device, right? Now, is it that the corbomite will destroy everything in the galaxy, or just the ship attacking? I don't remember, but the point is you can't destroy the Enterprise.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good times. Good to know.
But
good to know.
it's a bluff.
So, and kind of relating to the plot of Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
A little bit, which is a great weapon. They say in Dr. Strangelove, that's a really great weapon, provided you tell everybody about it, which is the whole point of the weapon.
Yeah.
And so the fact that people are, that this alien is told about it after they're in that desperate situation is kind of, for the alien it should be skeptical, but it makes no difference anyway, because it turns out the alien is just a really, really creepy looking child.
With really bad teeth.
Really bad teeth.
It's
far scarier than the puppet the child was recording that was controlling.
Yeah.
That's supposed to look really scary.
Possibly the ugly brother of the creepy twin girls from The Shining. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Just a really creepy kid. One of those kids that you would, if you met in real life, your urge is just to take him down for the sake of all humanity.
Yeah. So what?
But they don't do that. I guess they're more, they're more enlightened in the future, and they leave some guy with that creepy kid.
Yeah. In fact, it was a guy that kind of got himself in trouble on the ship for, I don't know. Did he get confined to his quarters at one point for something? I don't know. So he was no good. They were pawning him off on the kid.
Right. And it kind of, in every episode, there is the one guy. There's the guy. Well, first of all, there's the red shirt who dies, and there's also the one guy who has all this depth about him.
Yeah.
And he knows exactly what's going, and he's just the perfect plot device for what's going on in the show, because it's either some guy or some girl who studied specifically what they're dealing with, or someone who emotionally is tied to what they're dealing with for some reason, and that ensign that week kind of drives things.
Yeah. Okay, so and there's the corbomite maneuver. And to be honest, I guess story-wise, it's a better show. I think I watched the first 15 minutes of it, and I just kept thinking, you got to be kidding, because of the big glowing beach ball cube, and so it's probably a better episode than I give it credit for.
Well, I hear it's really, really grand on the remastered ones, which I can't rent on Netflix, which really bothers me.
Ah, that's right. They just dropped HD DVD.
Yeah, it's kind of rude. I mean, they could have just let us rent the leftovers that they have.
Yeah.
Or
well,
whatever.
Let's see. Okay, so there's that. Now, the next episode, I think we're going to take 2 episodes at once, because it's a 2-parter, right?
Yeah, and there was a lot of filler in this. Although it was a very good episode, there was a lot of filler in it.
Yeah, and so it also should be mentioned that this episode is basically the original pilot, more or less. It basically uses the original pilot for most of the episode. And the original pilot, Captain Kirk, wasn't in the picture. It was a Captain Pike, right?
Captain Pike, yes.
Okay, and so having watched the special features of Season 1, I learned that Captain Pike did not return for Episode 2 because he thought he was worth more money than they were willing to pay him.
Oh, is that right?
That's the case, and so his punishment is he gets to come back in the 2-part episode of the Menagerie with no speaking parts, doesn't get to move around, and he looks like he's been put through the paper shredder.
Well, it was a different actor who played him in the Menagerie.
Was it a different? Oh, was it? You sure? Different actor for the?
I'm pretty sure it was. I heard that's one of the purposes of his having the huge accident that messed up his face and head and hair and everything, is so that they could get a different actor and make it passable.
Okay, but when it shows the images of him in previous time, that's got to be the same actor. That's the same footage as the pilot, right?
Yeah, it's just the same footage as the pilot.
Okay.
But I don't think he filmed anything additional to the pilot.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, that makes sense. All right. So we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. So the Menagerie, this is kind of at least according to the videos that I read from Blockbuster, this seems to be the episode of the season, right? The big 2-part episode. And
yeah.
So what's going on is Spock has more or less hijacked the Enterprise and is taking it to, is it Thalos 4 or something? What's the name of the planet?
I think it's Talos 4, that's right.
Okay, oh man, I'm a nerd. Okay, taking it to Thalos 4. I shouldn't know that without looking at something. So,
it's coming.
So anyway, taking the starship to Thalos 4, which is forbidden. You're not allowed to make contact with Thalos 4. You're not allowed to land there. Nothing. It's forbidden, and the penalty
under penalty of
death.
Death.
Yeah.
Which, that's kind of crazy. So what? I can't even look at what's down there.
Yeah, and they don't give a good.
What could possibly be so bad? Oh, well.
They don't give a good reason through the whole episode. So the whole 2-part episode is basically Spock's his court-martial while the ship is I guess they have no way of changing the course of the ship. The ship's heading to Thalos 4 whether they like it or not.
Because Spock sabotaged the ship to go there.
Yeah. So he's under court-martial, and this is kind of what bothered me. The entire court-martial, Spock kept saying, I can't tell you, you just have to see. I can't tell you, you just have to see. Well, at the very end, after everything was revealed, all I could think was, why didn't you just say it? Why couldn't you just explain it? So, I guess if you just explained it, it would only make for 1-part episode.
Yeah, they needed to extend it out to the 2-parter.
Yeah.
They wanted to get their money's worth there, and they also wanted to have the longest first season of any television show in history, totaling 29 episodes, and they couldn't live with just 28.
So I guess what the story is on Thalos 4 before, when Spock was there with Pike, that it's this planet where the inhabitants there can make you see anything they want you to see, right?
Right.
And so it's not a real reality, but I mean it's you're more or less like living it. It's like the ultimate virtual reality, whatever. It's way better than Afterburner in the mall arcade. So
right, yeah.
So
yeah, it's this is reality. It's not video games.
Yeah,
it's as real as it can get.
Yeah, and so what Captain Pike, while he was there, met an alien woman, and I believe her real visage is kind of plain, but what he sees of her and of the place around, it's something really inviting, and it would be really great. And now that he's older and beat up and can't move, can't walk, can't talk, can't nothing, well, if Spock manages to get him back to this planet, he will be able to live a real life again, and it would be his ideal life, even though it's all just more or less in his mind, but it's real enough to him, right?
Right.
Okay, so
which is, yeah. Okay, go ahead. I'll get to that.
That's it. So they get him there, and the Federation is extremely lenient, and it seems like
we're not going to kill everyone on this ship, even though we should, according to our own laws.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first episode where there's a situation like this, but there's several like this in the first 2 seasons, and in the end, the Federation. It's always the situation where if you do this, you're in really big trouble with the Federation, and either Spock or Captain Kirk goes ahead anyway. And in the end, the Federation sends a message saying, we understand perfectly, and no one is in trouble, and so it's very forgiving of them.
Yeah, that's pretty nice of them. So, what did you think of? Did you ever bother to watch The Cage? The episode that this is based on, the episode where the footage comes from.
No, I mean I saw parts of it from the special features, and for some reason it was all in black and white, and Spock seemed to be a much more emotional character in that pilot than the Spock we're used to in the show. But I haven't seen it all the way through.
Okay, that's fine. I don't know if I've ever seen it all the way through, but I mean, The Cage, is my understanding, is Captain Pike. He's on the planet. He has anything he wants. The aliens provide it for him, but he doesn't agree with it because it's not real. He's unsatisfied, and so he leaves, and that's the end of The Cage, right? Humanity isn't what we visualize. Humanity isn't in our perceptions. It's something more real and more tactile than that, and that's like the theme of that episode. So do you think there's kind of a kind of ambiguity in what is being said now that you can't feel anything? isn't it kind of an empty message to just say, okay, go and just live your life in this dream world then, because you're useless now?
Now that you're a paraplegic, you might as well go back. I don't know, John, but as I've noticed through other Star Trek episodes, this theme comes up a lot, where the crew or crew members find themselves in a situation where their every need is met and they're living in a paradise, but it's not real, or they would have to kind of be controlled by the alien race, even though they're being given everything they want. And Kirk always gives it a big thumbs down because it's just not right, because it's just not real. And I don't know. I'm thinking, if it's enjoyable and if everything's the way you want it to be, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It can be plenty real if you want it to be.
So you'd probably take the other pill in the Matrix then, like when you were offered the choice.
Well, I don't know if I was living Neo's crappy life, who knows? But if I was living the life that some of these people get offered, like Pike, I mean, he's a paraplegic, and so nothing can be crappier than that. Sorry to any paraplegic people that I've just offended. And if I'm him, I'll stay there on Thalos 4 and enjoy the extremely attractive female companion that's been provided for me.
Yeah, it would be nice. Also, you'd think, he'd get a better wheelchair than they gave him. I mean, all it could do was blink, for crying out loud.
And it kind of looks like he's just stuck in a washing machine.
Yeah, he's just stuck in a washing machine. They're like, okay, we'll give you a button that you can hit once or twice, but you can't do anything else.
That'll teach him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally rooted then. Fine. Moving on.
Okay, so episode 13, The Conscience of the King, one of my more favorite episodes.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, so you got the plot here is that Kirk is watching a Shakespeare presentation with one of his old friends on the man's planet, and the guy points out the main actor of the troupe and says, "Don't you recognize him?" And he thinks that it is this man. And can you remember the guy's name, the character's name?
Kodos,
Governor Kodos, right? So
Kodos, as in king, and Kodos.
Yeah. So Kodos apparently was this man who was a governor of sorts of some planet, where in order to save the rest of the planet, he had, it's either hundreds or thousands of people were executed. 4,000 people? Is that?
Yeah, 4,000 people were executed. I think there were 8,000 people total, and they were all starving.
All starving. 4,000 people were executed so that the rest could survive, but what Kodos didn't know was that food supplies would have arrived on time to save everyone, correct?
No, that's right, which is pretty bleak. And I kind of felt sorry for Kodos, because he did what he thought he had to do.
Yeah, and
there's no other character besides him who kind of feels for him in how heavy a decision was made, even though I think most people wouldn't make that decision, because you'd have to be pretty immoral to make the decision, but you'd have to make it under moral, under some kind of moral guideline, for a higher purpose, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, and so while I was watching it, everyone was condemning what a terrible decision it was he made, and I agree. You probably don't sentence 2,000 people to death over this. You just kind of hold on and hope, and to be honest, as soon as people start dying of starvation, then you're going to have less people to feed anyway. But the truth is it would have been a very tough situation to deal with, and what do? And you have to make a tough choice, and he did make the choice that he thought was right. And so I think that's why I like this episode. It's really a tough question and a tough choice, and they're painting him as a murderer, but he thinks that what he did was the right thing, which kind of brings up the idea that we think there's evil world leaders today, right? But I'm pretty sure none of them think of themselves as evil, right?
Some of them might be really warped and twisted, but yeah, obviously they're not going to call themselves, "I am the evil Saddam Hussein," even though he is obviously, or he was obviously.
Yeah.
But they may be deluded, but they, and this guy wasn't one of those. He was a little bit more in the gray area.
Yeah. So what happens is there were like 3 or 4 people who, back in the day of this, all the people being executed, saw him and know what he looks like. One is Kirk, and one is Kirk's friend, and one is someone else, I don't know. So Kirk's friend is murdered while the acting troupe is there, and then they look back in history, and all the other people who could have ID'd him were always murdered at the time that this acting troupe was on their planet. And so this acting troupe comes on board the Starship Enterprise, and Kirk falls in love, or I can never tell when Kirk's falling in love. He becomes enamored anyway with Kodos'.
He's so good with poker, you can never tell.
Yeah, with Kodos' daughter, right? And so they're hitting it off. And what's the big surprise, John, when what we learn about all the people that are getting killed?
They're not killed by Kodos to cover his tracks. They're killed by Kodos' daughter to cover her father's tracks.
Exactly. And Kodos, when he learns this, even though he had 2,000 people executed, Kodos is just shocked and abhorred by the fact that his daughter has been assassinating the people that could ID him. So, I mean, I guess the guy's still... I mean, he's obviously still got some humanity and some ideas of right and wrong. Otherwise, he probably would have said, oh, well, yeah, I appreciate that, and thanks, and can you take care of Captain Kirk? Because I think he's the last one.
Right, yeah. I guess, he's not complete. He's been on the run for 20 years. And, he's carrying this burden. He obviously doesn't want to, face up to everything that he did.
Yeah.
But I think he's comforted in knowing that, all this weight is strictly on him and no one else. And the people he actually cares for, they can be left out of it. And it was so... the horrifying revelation to him about his daughter is that, she would have to bear the same things that he would bear. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, exactly. That he realizes he had to do something terrible, and he doesn't want his daughter to be any part of that. He's never told her because he doesn't want her to have to deal with it, and now he finds out that she has also become a murderer, and it's kind of sad. What can you do? But all in all, that was
sad episodes.
Pretty darn good episode.
Yeah, I liked it. Just a few other things, maybe some more lighthearted things that I think need to be mentioned. What did you think of her fur mini dress that she wore?
I'm having a hard time remembering and picturing it.
I'll send you a picture of it, but I think you'll understand what kind of a cold, heartless person, because someone who wears a fur mini dress is probably kind of pretty heartless, I would say. But it's a pretty interesting costume. I think I'm going to probably start a gallery of the crazy costumes.
Okay.
This is tops for the, this current, crop of episodes that we're looking at. Of course, last time is that halter overalls that the android lady wore, and what are little girls made of. So
yeah.
Also in this episode, we found McCoy drinking a lot. He seemed pretty. In a couple scenes, he's just knocking them down. Yeah. Which I find is interesting. You won't find this interesting yet, but by the time we get to Next Generation, there's no alcohol, and I think there's some kind of new prohibition going on in the deep future. Let's see. There's some cheesy stuff that Kirk says. Uhura has a harp song, kind of flower power age of the '60s. Blah 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 blah.
That seemed to be big in the earlier episodes, and it's been many an episode since I've seen it.
They kind of stopped with that lately. Kirk has a really great line when he's confronting Kodos toward the end, because it's really funny because it's very obvious that Kodos is Kodos. I can't remember the name he goes by, but it's not Kodos, obviously. But Kirk says, "Are you Kodos?" And he gives this huge speech about humanity and. I've played several parts in my life, and I've done all this, and da-da-da, making it really, really obvious that he's Kodos. Like, there's no way, you'd say that if he wasn't, he'd just say, I have no idea what you're talking about, and then just leave it at that. But he gave, like, a 5-minute speech talking about humanity when he asked him that question. And when Kirk confronts him, he said, because he makes him read the execution lines that he would read to people who are about to be executed for the greater good. Yeah. And Kirk said, "Are you sure you didn't act these words in front of a more captive audience?" Which I thought was really clever wordplay. And also, in the lounge in this episode, they were playing the Star Trek theme song. How meta is that? Did you notice that? They were playing this lounge version of their own Star Trek theme song. It's kind of like in Simpsons when Nelson is frying a carrot and he's singing the Simpsons theme song. I'm like, where did you pick up that theme song? How do they know the Star Trek theme song in Star Trek? Did they watch themselves on TV? You know, or is the Star Trek theme song? Is it like, before it's like their national anthem that they sing to themselves every morning? You know, or reveille or whatever.
I don't know. That is interesting, and it's interesting when films and TV shows kind of cross the boundary like that, when there's something that only the audience should know about the show, and all of a sudden apparently the people in the show become aware of it as well. So craziness.
Right. Okay. Are we done with that one? I want to put that on my top. That's close to the top of the ones we're talking about. But the next one is really, really good too. I really like the next one.
Yeah, let me read you.
Next one is Balance of Terror, right?
Let me read you the episode summary I have here. It says, Kirk pits the Enterprise against an invisible spaceship testing the Federation's defenses. Now, I would say that summary fits maybe a full third of the of the Star Trek episodes. But this is a very important episode because it's the first time we meet the Romulans, and I think it's probably at about this point in season 1 where I start realizing that the creator of Star Trek must have had a whole lot of backstory going in, as opposed to kind of writing as we go along. And so, I mean, maybe I'm giving it too much credit at this point, but we start getting into this, and we start getting into some other things, and it just feels like there's kind of a deep backstory that's being revealed. So we got the Romulans. We meet them for the first time, and what's the problem with the Romulans, and why does it cause so much conflict on the ship, John?
Well, the thing is, they don't even know what the Romulans look like.
That's right.
For all they know, they all have togas and stuff, because they're apparently descended from Romulus and Remus somehow.
Yeah.
But somehow they're able to get some kind of camera inside the Romulan ship. Doing something. They did something I don't understand, but they were able to get a visualization on the Romulan bridge to see what they actually look like, because they've known about them for 100 years, but they haven't had contact with them. They just had war with them. And lo and behold, those Romulans, they look exactly like Spock does. They're like Vulcans.
Yeah. Yes, they do. They look a lot like Vulcans, and so Spock kind of has a rough time of it on the ship. A little bit of distrust from some other people, but it's not like it's Spock's fault. So what can you do? Another episode, another instance of trying to battle racial stereotypes and prejudices through Star Trek. So Spock looks like the Romulans, and Romulans look like Vulcans. So what's the deal here now? There's these two planets, one's owned by the Romulans and one is run by someone else, and there's a neutral zone between them. Mm-hmm. And if anyone enters the neutral zone, then it's an automatic declaration of war, right?
Right.
Okay, now the Romulans, it's tricky because their ship can do what, John? This is the first time, and it appears that this is the first time that the Starship Enterprise has ever encountered a ship that can do this. But their ship has a special device. It
has a special cloaking device that, and so this is the first instance. So much. This particular episode is so pivotal because they really hit on something really cool. Now the Enterprise, pretty much every ship they come across is going to have some kind of cloaking device that they can't see. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, this Romulan ship it's not very fast. They don't have, I don't think they have warp speed, and so they can't quite fly at the speed of light. And so their trip takes much longer, or something like that, right?
And they cannot attack while being cloaked. They have, because the cloaking is takes a lot of power.
Yes, and one more thing, they can't, when they're cloaked, they can't see the other ship. It kind of goes both ways. It takes up their cloaking thing. It takes up so much energy, and it's nice because no one can find them. But they can't see anybody else while they're cloaked. It's like
now. can they raise their shields while they're cloaked? Because it seems like the Enterprise kind of fires blindly in the direction of where they think the ship is, and it seems like they get a few lucky hits.
Right.
So I can't.
I imagine they can't raise their shields while they're cloaked.
Okay.
Otherwise, the hits wouldn't have really done as much. So so that's air the title, The Balance of Terror, because there are all these different factors. It's kind of like a knight piece going up against a rook. Both ships have different abilities, and they have different speeds, and they can travel different distances, and they have different methods of attack.
Yeah. So now we're in a situation here where the Romulans have seen something that if they make it back to their home planet, they will certainly declare war on the planet across from the neutral zone. And so Captain Kirk is put in a situation where basically they have to destroy the Romulan ship, right?
Right. Well, the way I understood it is they had to... The Romulans, if they destroyed all those outposts and they made it back, they would have made it back scot-free, because it couldn't really be proven that it was them because they're invisible, and anybody could have done that.
And I guess the idea is that the Romulans, if they notice weakness from the other side, that then they jump on. I don't know why, but the idea was as soon as they get back to the Romulan planet, that they're coming in force.
Yeah, I think because they know that since they were successful, kind of like the arms race, I suppose. Since they had more, since they were more powerful, it would be logical to strike while they could take over with little resistance. And so that's why it's so important to stop them, to make sure that they know that they're not more powerful, that there is a balance, and therefore there is peace. Yeah,
that's right. So we have Kirk, who makes the hard decision that the ship must be destroyed, but there's someone on board, and I've got to think it's McCoy, who is absolutely opposed to destroying the Romulan ship, because McCoy he's the big pacifist on the ship. So I can't remember the episode, but there's someone on board who's really, really opposed to destroying the Romulan ship. Maybe you can clarify that for me.
It was... let's just say McCoy.
Okay, because I know Spock decides that logically the Romulan ship has to be destroyed. So I'm pretty sure it's McCoy that just abhors the idea of following the ship and destroying it when the ship's basically trying to get away from them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. So now, how does Captain Kirk actually win this battle? I can't quite remember, because they're not allowed to go in the neutral zone. Now, if I remember correctly, they feign that their ship has been weakened or crippled, right? And so they draw the Romulan ship towards them?
They draw them out so that the pride of the Romulans will lead them to finish the job. And of course, it is in the Romulans' best interest to do that, just so that there's no proof that it was the Romulans who actually came. But the Romulan leader knows that Kirk has something up his sleeve, so he's hesitant to do that, because which is really great. You have the interplay where the Romulan leader does something, and then Kirk falls into it, and he's like, he did just what I would have done. And then when Kirk does something, the Romulan leader is like, oh, that's a spry devil. He did just what I was gonna do.
Yeah, so you've got
so
these
they earn each other's respect.
That's right, the mutual respect of the two commanders, and it kind of reminds me of the movie that the three amigos are supposed to do at the beginning of their movie, but right before they get fired, where they go out and they meet the bandit, and at first they fight, but they learn to respect each other, and at the end they're friends. Of course, yeah, the Romulans and the Federation can never be friends, despite how much they respect each other. And the guy doesn't even make an attempt. The Romulan doesn't even make an attempt to save his life. So the Romulan ship is destroyed, and that's that.
That's that. And the Romulan is, of course, played by Mark Lenard, who I guess loved having pointy ears stuck on him, because he also played Spock's father later.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting, and he played, and that's like his main role. He played Spock's father a few times, even in Next Generation. He was still Spock's father. But anyway, Balance of Terror, really, really good episode. It's kind of like it was a lot of these early ones. They kind of go against the intro, exploring new life and new civilizations. When you think of Star Trek, you think, okay, they find a planet and there's something weird and they figure out what's weird and then they leave. But this particular episode and a lot that follow it are just kind of different types of stories. This is like a naval battle almost, something like out of like Master and Commander or something like that.
Yeah.
So they kind of use this, science fiction and the Star Trek universe to kind of tell a different type story. And this was a nice change of pace, don't you think? It's very different and very unique and very, very fun to watch.
Yeah, it was a good episode. And it also brings up a really, really basic point about Star Trek period that maybe we should have discussed earlier, or at least brought up, that even though, right now when we send people into space, it's under the purview of the Air Force, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the future, it's the Navy. It's like the Navy is they run space operations.
Right. Yeah.
So.
So maybe you joined the wrong branch of the military.
Yeah, I'm never going to get on board a starship.
Yeah, you're never going to be on board a starship. You thought you were shooting for the stars, but you're really just shooting for the clouds in the Air Force.
Yeah. Which brings us to the next episode, which is Shore Leave, which actually is a lot like your description of the basic Star Trek episode. You go to a planet, figure out what's wrong, and leave. But this is I think this was a fun episode, and we ought to be able to discuss it pretty quickly. So they're all taking leave on this planet that there's no life forms, right? But it's kind of like a Garden of Eden sort of planet. It's really beautiful, and they decide to take shore leave, and I believe it's Dr. McCoy who says that it kind of reminds him of Alice in Wonderland, and no sooner does he say that, but he sees the white rabbit bouncing away, saying he's late, and then Alice follows in tow. And it just kind of goes from there. You find Sulu, right? Sulu finds a handgun, and he said he was just thinking about how fun it would be to shoot a handgun or whatever, and so it seems to be whatever these people think of happens, and you think, okay, that's good, but it's not just the good things they think of that happen. Mm-hmm. It's also if they're thinking of something bad or scary, that happens too.
Yes, which does get scary when because McCoy is hanging out with the, can I just say, really, really hot new yeoman on board? The woman who replaced Yeoman Rand, the kind of Victoria Jackson looking blonde yeoman. Now we have this redhead yeoman with kind of cool hair, and she's really pretty, and she's totally cuddling up to Dr. McCoy, but she unfortunately thinks of a knight in shining armor while she's with him, and the knight in shining armor comes and, oh my gosh, he kills Dr. McCoy. Which, if I watched that for the first time, I would have been horrified if I didn't know Dr. McCoy would live for another, 90 years or whatever.
Yeah. In fact, it kind of becomes a hallmark through the second half of the first season and also the second season that major characters seem to die a lot, only to be saved in one way or another. So McCoy gets killed, and we're thinking, how crummy is this place after all? But then the creators of the place reveal themselves, and they say, what, that this place is, it's an amusement park. You think of it, and it comes true. And even the bad things, nothing is permanent. So who do we see coming out of the brush? We see McCoy coming, and he's been completely fixed. He's not dead, and he's
escorted by two ladies,
Yes, because he had been thinking of a lovely cabaret show he had seen once. And so what? So even though we had some really scary brushes with death on this planet, when it's revealed that nothing's permanent and you can have a lot of fun as long as you're kind of careful what you think about, Kirk immediately orders shore leave for the entire ship, and that's the end of the episode. So
and he's like, try not to imagine yourself dying, is like his final orders. Yeah. Which I thought, okay, now I was watching this episode just before we started doing this podcast. I was like, oh, let me finish shore leave, before we start so I could talk about it. And you're like, oh, okay, good. Yeah, that's a good one. But this episode kind of bugged me. Because it's a lot like a lot of the others. and you're kind of like, okay, someone's controlling, someone has some weird agenda, something weird is going on. But then the whole episode, we're exposed to these weird things happening, and then at the very end, this guy just comes out and says, "This is my amusement park. Whatever you think of, it comes true." And they're like, "Oh, really?" And we're like, "Yeah, well, we kind of know that already." And then Kirk just kind of laughs and says, "Oh, that's kind of funny." And then that's it. Like, there's no... we know that, whatever they think of comes true. And, surely there has to be something more than that. And surely, I kind of wanted, Kirk to have a fist fight with that guy, but he didn't. He just kind of laughed it off. This episode was kind of like shore leave. It literally was shore leave as far as like Star Trek deepness goes.
Yeah.
It was seriously a break, from handling all this stuff. Like, Kirk didn't even want to handle the deeper implications of what was going on, so he just kind of said, okay, well, it's a vacation, yada yada yada, that's it.
Yeah, it's kind of like an entire planet that, if I remember correctly, becomes like like the holograph chamber in the Next Generation, right?
Yep. It's precursor to holodeck, which maybe let's be honest, I think I'd have a holodeck addiction problem if I was on a starship. It would just be, there's your life, and then there's whatever you want.
Yeah.
So it could be troublesome, and of course this is touched on in. Let's see, what else were we talking about in the Menagerie? Of course, a lot of this. This is really another episode of Menagerie. And obviously, now that you and I are talking over the Pacific Ocean, and we have all this great stuff, and we have the internet, and we have all this stuff, and technology is so amazing that we can almost do, well, we can't do whatever we want, but we can kind of experience anything we want right now. And I think that's, this all this kind of stuff that they talked about in the 60s, they kind of, foretold, what life would be like, when we have so much freedom that we have. Would we indulge in freedom, or would we, indulge in progress?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is... Yeah, you kind of feel like this is one of those episodes, and just like you said, you almost expect Kirk to have a big fight with the guy, because he's in this situation in other episodes, and he's like, but it's not real, and blah, blah, blah. But I think you're right in saying that it not only is it shore leave for the members of the crew, but it's shore leave for the show.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
and most of the issues were already taken care of in other episodes, but it was a good excuse to just have a lot of goofy stuff happen. So. I imagine this was one of the episodes that was probably fairly fun for the actors to do. Mm-hmm.
So there then. All right. The next one is the Galileo 7, right?
Oh, yes.
Now, I think you probably really like this one. I'm so-so on it, but this is one of those episodes where the entire episode is about how much Spock's logic sucks, and how everyone hates him because of it. And of course McCoy is in the center of it. And I think we all know that McCoy and Spock have a deep regard for each other and even friendship, but they sure bicker and argue a lot. And this episode is basically an hour of that.
Right.
So, but why don't you set it up?
Okay, I'll set it up. The ship, the Enterprise, they're on their way to deliver medicine to some dying colony. Very important medicine. But on the way there, oh my gosh, they discover a quasar. And Kirk is like, I gotta see this quasar. Let's go send a shuttlecraft out to see this quasar. It's gonna be awesome. Which is kind of lame. I mean, how lame is that? So they send out the Galileo, which is the shuttlecraft, and there's 7 people on there. And the quasar sends an ion storm or something, causes them to crash on the planet, and they're stuck down there. And there are big, giant, 10-foot creatures there who are trying to kill them. and Spock is in command of the Galileo 7, and he rules with an iron fist of logic. And, they almost mutiny because they're like, we're going to die here. How can you be so cold? And he's like, look, I'm just doing the logical stuff to keep us alive. And, for the first... I thought you might really like this episode because the first half of the show, it's Spock at his best, logically. He people, I think McCoy or someone says, well, now's your big chance for command. What do you think of that? And Spock says, I don't relish or fear command. It just exists. It's just something. I don't have any aspirations for command. But when it's presented to me, I do it. And I do it to the best of my abilities. Very, very just straightforward about it. And I thought the most interesting Spock moment was one of the red shirts dies. The creature kills him.
A giant spear to the chest.
It's a huge spear. It's just like it's like a giant shovel. The spearhead's like a shovel. The aliens are giant and they've got terrible teeth, and I think they reappear in season 2. But go ahead. Oh, do they really? Oh, I look forward to that. And so they carry the crew guy away. They carry his body away, and they're like, Spock, we need to bury this guy, and we need to have a service for him. And Spock's like, that's illogical. I have so much to do to keep us alive. And they're like, how could you be so cold? And he's just like, this is ridiculous. I have to keep us alive. I have to keep working at this other stuff. We can worry about his body later because there's nothing we can do to bring him back. And they're like, ugh, and so they kind of get annoyed with that. And then they're like, the creatures are coming. If we use our phasers, we can stop these creatures. And then Spock goes, I just don't understand, how you can take life so lightly. Which is really funny because Spock was taking life lightly. Or at least, death. Or at least life services. And, it would seem to be a little ambiguous in that he disregards this guy's body. But then he also says, it's not up to us to take the lives of these aliens, whether they're hostile or not. And so I kind of thought that was kind of unique. Kind of going back to what we talked about last week when you said, under logic, if Spock is perfectly logical, like most computers who are perfectly logical, wouldn't they just start killing people? Because that's what happens when computers take over. But Spock is, part of his personality is that he's closer to McCoy than Kirk in his treatment of life. That life is sacred, and while he won't bury a guy, even if someone's trying to kill him, he doesn't want to. He'll avoid it at any cost, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. It's brought up again in season 2 when someone makes the point of how the Vulcans are so much better than humans. Why haven't they conquered? And McCoy says because the Vulcans worship peace above all else, or something like that. So I think the point is that so he doesn't want to do the funerals, but he can't handle the idea of killing the natives there. I mean, they haven't done anything except they're just protecting their own land. But my interpretation of this is that Spock, his prime directive is to protect life. Well, the people who are about to be buried, they're already dead. And all they're doing is reducing the likelihood of protecting life that still exists. By burying them, you're putting more life in jeopardy. So it's too bad that they're dead, but his prime directive is protecting life, right?
Right.
So that's kind of how I see it. And then, of course, you go through all this about how Spock is so cold, and then at the end of the episode, what happens? Spock's logic dictates that everyone takes off and he stays behind and he sacrifices himself.
Right. But they are human, and they don't do that, and they drag him aboard.
Yeah.
And everything kind of almost works out. And this is foreshadowing to he says it's kind of he says 1 life for 6. Leave me here. It's just life is very basic for him. I sacrifice myself so that, and it's not like, he would never use the word martyr. He's just like, well, this is obviously what needs to be done. But because they did that, they have less of a chance of being rescued by the ship. But it's TV and they miraculously are, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But also, Spock, toward the second half, he starts making the wrong decisions, because he doesn't understand. He's like, I've done everything logical, and I think McCoy says to him, you've done everything logical in trying to understand beings that don't feel, but anybody who feels would understand, and so that was kind of Spock's drawback, is that he couldn't really feel what these aliens that were attacking were. What was going on with them, and they probably should have been taking a different stance than he took.
Yeah. So it was a very revealing episode as far as Spock's personality goes, and you get, up to the point in this episode, there's been a little bit of back and forth bickering between Spock and McCoy, and of course this one there's a whole bunch of that, but you also get the feeling at the end that Spock and McCoy actually really respect each other, and I don't remember how it ended, but I'm sure there was some sort of quippy remarks made by both of them at the very end, and
I'm sure
Spock
there
had the
was.
last word. Yeah.
Why, you green-blooded? Why, thank you, Doctor. Something like that.
Yeah.
But they respect each other just like Romulan commanders do.
Yes.
Okay, going on then. We can still go on.
Yeah, so let's see, the Squire of Gothos. This episode was alright. Now, the Squire, we're going to see him as a Klingon in Season 2, by the way.
Oh, wow, yeah, it's very, did you recognize him under all that Klingon makeup?
Well, I don't know if you've seen very many Klingons yet in Season 1 or Season, and you're watching, but there's not a whole lot of makeup. I think the Klingon look that we know from the Next Generation, and I haven't seen a ton of it, but I know enough that they've got the huge forehead bone structure. Well, there really isn't any of that.
Yeah, if we were actually doing Deep Space, I can't remember, but they do explain why the physical structure of the Klingon head changes between seasons, or they attempt to explain it. And I'm not exactly sure what the explanation is, because I stopped watching Star Trek by that point, but
Okay.
but maybe I'll explain later if I get around to doing that.
Okay. So what happens? We end up on this planet, and you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think the entire planet is uninhabitable except for like this very small space.
That's right.
They beam down to it, and it looks like 18th century England, and you've got this guy who calls himself the Squire, I think. And he's kind of running the place, and again, it's one of those situations where he kind of offers them whatever they want. And what's his restriction? You'll have to refresh my memory. Is he holding the ship? He's restricting their freedom somehow, and it rubs Kirk.
He won't let him beam back.
Yeah.
And I think and the planet itself is kind of like in the Corbomite Light maneuver. It's like in their way. Because he controls the entire planet, like where it goes, and somehow this planet, I guess, travels at the speed of light, and gets in the Enterprise's way, which is pretty feat-worthy. And I mean, he doesn't quite give them what they want. He kind of, if someone says, like, if Uhura wants to play the harpsichord in some 18th century song, then he'll let her. But he has a few more limitations, but still, the crew is at his mercy.
Yeah, and it's more like they're there to entertain him. He's been waiting for someone to help fill out his 18th century England sort of fantasy that he's trying to live. He's been living it by himself, and now he's got some people to kind of do it with, right? And so I mean, it's not so much that he's this benevolent person who wants them to be as happy as can be, but he's kind of using them for self-amusement. And so they have all this, and now if I'm correct, they have this big table with all this food, but the food tastes like nothing, right? Because the guy has no idea what food tastes like. Right,
because you kind of get the impression that he's been observing Earth through like a telescope kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was, his planet is 900 light years away from Earth, so it's like 900 years in the past, which doesn't make any sense at all, because that would put his viewing in the 14th century or so, like not the 18th century. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They didn't really establish time, like exactly when Star Trek is taking place until like a while later. They're still establishing some things because like in other episodes, like they talk about Space Command or the United something of interstellar probing or something like that. It wasn't until just a couple episodes ago that they finally decided on Starfleet, and I think in a few episodes in the future they're going to decide, oh yeah, this is the 23rd century. But yeah, he's kind of, humanity to him is what he observes, not what he experiences, and it's what he observes in the past, and he's really stuck on this whole 18th century stuff.
Okay. Yeah, and so he's kind of got it wrong a little bit, but so what he comes across as is it's like a spoiled child playing with his playthings, and his playmates don't want to play along. And so Kirk notices that he's never away from this big mirror, and so he figures out that the mirror is what he's using to control everything. Mm-hmm. Right, and so I don't remember exactly what happens. Is Kirk able to destroy the mirror or what? But it gets to the point where everyone is released, and it's just Kirk and this guy, and Kirk has worked it out so everyone else is free, and he's allowed himself to be hunted by this guy. It's been a while since I've seen this episode.
Yeah, he hunts with him, he stalls, he plays with him, and then they start fighting, and Kirk breaks his sword, and he has a tantrum, and Kirk slaps him, and he acts like a child.
And then we learn that more or less he is, because we hear these two voices of a woman and a man, and I guess this squire is like their kid, right?
Yep, he's just a little kid, and he's playing with toys, and they're like, you don't have the responsibility to play with these toys.
Yeah, so overindulgent parents, and they should have corrected him earlier, and they're finally correcting him now, and so that they more or less tell him that, I'm sorry, you're done until season 2 when you come back as a Klingon.
Yeah, so maybe they made him into a Klingon. Maybe that was his next little thing.
Yeah.
Okay, well that was
It was
okay.
an alright episode. It wasn't great.
Yeah, it was okay. Okay. Moving on. Where's my list? Arena.
Yes, Arena.
Okay, Arena is. It could have been a half hour long, I think.
Yeah, I think my kids love this episode because of the bad guy.
Really?
So, let's see. There's a mysterious alien race that destroys an Earth colony, and the Enterprise pursues. And what happens? They're about to start fighting each other, but there's this alien race, and they can't handle the idea of these two other races that are trying to fight and kill each other, so they come to the conclusion that the best way to deal with this is to have the commanders of each ship duke it out, right?
Right.
And so...
Kind of like in a more boring version of Balance of Terror. You have this hand battle between Kirk and this lizard-like Gorn. And the Gorn is really big and strong, but he's also the slowest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah, it
just
doesn't seem like it'd be...
along.
It wouldn't be too hard to beat this guy. 'Cause, I mean, you see his maneuverability, and I mean, you just kind of stay behind him the whole time and keep punching him in the back of the head.
Yeah, that's probably what I would do. Maybe pull his pants down, watch him trip.
But nothing they did to this guy could kill him, and so everyone on the Enterprise is able to watch, but they can't communicate with Kirk, and they notice that there's some things on this planet that Kirk could use to kill him, and Kirk more or less fashions like a
kind of a cannon type thing.
A cannon, yeah, out of a bamboo pole and some.
He finds stuff that would enable them to build gunpowder, and he uses a diamond and a bamboo. It's like a diamond bullet, which would probably hurt, and it works.
It works, but Kirk refuses to kill the Gorn, and boy, does that shock the alien race that set the whole thing up.
Yeah, which is definitely my favorite part, because this alien race, they bring these two, the Gorn and the Starfleet, together, and they say, you guys, just like so many other advanced alien races we see, you are unnecessarily violent, and you're hunters and you're predatory, and we don't understand that, and so we're going to make you do this to kind of teach you a lesson. And so and so Kirk does it, and he defeats the Gorn, and he passes, and they say, congratulations, way to be merciful, but we'll still kill the Gorn vessel if you want us to. Which makes no sense at all. Like, they're all being all self-righteous and being like, you guys go around killing people, and we need to teach you a lesson, but if you pass the lesson, we'll go ahead and kill your enemies.
Yeah.
So I don't know what their deal is there.
Yeah.
And what are they? The Metatrons are like these angel type things that are the I forgot what they're called. Metrons, I think. And kind of interesting. The Gorns are kind of interesting because they weren't that bad. They obviously seem to be a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more evil than Starfleet, but what Starfleet didn't know is that they built a colony on their space, and they were simply kind of defending their space, and Starfleet didn't know where they were, and so it was kind of a misunderstanding that could have been figured out if those meddling aliens didn't interfere.
Okay, we're going to talk about the last episode for this session, and we'll have made it through 10 episodes, and so next session we'll just have to do 10 more.
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay, so let's see. Tomorrow is yesterday, episode 19, so what happens is the Starship Enterprise ends up in a black hole, and of course every time you end up in a black hole you get thrown back to Earth in the 20th century.
Oh, yeah.
Despite the fact that the movie Black Hole doesn't depict that at all.
You said every time.
So what happens is they're and they're not in outer space either. They're kind of like flying up with normal air traffic in outer space, and I don't know how that is, because can the starship enter the atmosphere? I guess so.
Funny you should mention that, because later I think they say that it can't.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure it can't.
Anyway, they're reacted to by some Air Force pilots, and we have some great stock footage in this episode of Air Force pilots. And so, what happens? I think that they have to erase any proof that they were there, because they don't want to alter the future. And so they have to destroy the aircraft that the pilot is in, but they also have to take him with them. So they destroy his aircraft, but they beam him aboard the starship at the same time. And so he's on the starship, and they figure, okay, well, he's just going to have to stay with us forever, and there's no proof that we were there. And when other spacecraft have been seen before, people always write it off as weather balloons or whatever. So they're not worried, and they look in the guy's history, and he doesn't do anything important, so it's not going to alter history. But what do they find out? That his unborn son is very important, and the point is that space exploration would have set back hundreds of years if his son never gets born. So something like that. So any serious Star Trek nerds who are listening to this podcast, if I'm really wrong, I'm sorry, but I think that's the gist of it.
Right.
So they've got to return him to Earth, but they also learn from him that the air base where he's stationed at has proof from the audio recordings of his aircraft. They have proof of the existence of the Starship Enterprise, so they got to go back and take care of that stuff too.
So this sounds a lot like that episode of Simpsons where Homer builds the time toaster and keeps going back and keeps changing things and has to fix things.
Yeah, it's a lot like that, and I wish I'd seen this more recently. But basically, they go back to try and fix it, and the guy, I guess, is going to promise that he won't say anything to alter the future, but they've got to go back a little earlier and they've got to take their records from the base, and of course they get caught by security personnel, and it's a mess. Yeah. And I wish I had a better summary in front of me, because I can't remember how it gets resolved, but it does.
Well, it sounds okay. It sounds like the summary
officially
of this
the worst episode.
It's the worst one?
Yeah. No, officially the worst summary that we've given for an episode yet.
Well, maybe so.
Most uninformed.
And I don't remember seeing this episode, but it sounds kind of like another summary for this episode is 2/3 of the way through the first season, the Star Trek production crew runs out of money, and so they need to find an excuse to cast this episode in present day. And so they come up with this whole story of how they have to, get information from, present day people, and they have an excuse to use Air Force stock footage for the majority of the episode.
Yeah.
So, did you like the episode at all, or was it just kind of another genre swapping one where it's like a little bit of covert stuff, and wasn't that good?
It was okay. It just became a kind of a mess of, okay, if we have to go fix it, and in our attempt to fix it we messed it up again, we got to fix that too, and it this is probably one of the episodes where I probably would have been easily distracted by anything else going on, so it didn't even make a good enough impression on me to remember how it all got resolved. But they got the captain back to Earth, and not a great episode, but that makes sense. What you're saying, that it was a budget problem. They must have gotten some budget back, because they got 10 more episodes to go.
It'd be great if they got like if they kept screwing more and more things up until finally at the end of the episode they go back in time and just destroy the Earth, because there's nothing else they can do.
Yeah. So anyway, there's that episode. So I think this is a good set of episodes. Most of these are pretty darn good. A couple of my favorites in here, even though I lost my reference materials. So let's see, what do we have? We had the Menagerie and Conscience of the King and Balance of Terror. I thought were both good, and of course Conscience of the King posed some really serious questions, about what's ethical and what's right.
And that juxtapose them on acting. It's an acting team, and it's like he's acting as a different person and she's acting as a different person.
Yeah.
Kind of some cool concepts.
Yeah, and so there's that, and then Shore Leave was fun. Galileo 7 was a big, a nice character development episode for Spock, and Arena was pretty good. Tomorrow is yesterday, but it was a good set of episodes. This is more enjoyable than the first third of the season. So,
yeah, it's a good crop, very good crop. I would say Conscience of the King and Balance of Terror were two right back to back that were just I think both of them kind of went a little bit beyond Star Trek, if you know what I mean. They both, like, if the same stories were told in a different medium than Star Trek, they could have easily done that. They could have been on any show, or it could have been any stories that's outside of the Star Trek universe, and I think most people would really get into them and think they were very well done. So I think I really like those. One thing I forgot to mention about Balance of Terror is, what do you think of the Romulans now that we've met them? How do they get to be named Romulans? Isn't that a purely Earth term? They're from the planets Romulus and Remus, and they all have Caesar haircuts. Did they steal that from us, or that's never really explained, and I'm really confused. Let's talk about that next time. Can we do that?
With the cop-out theory that it's all about the collective consciousness, that despite the fact that these people may have never had the same experiences, etc., and inevitably our history will go through some of the same phases. So
that's some pretty deep stuff. Thanks for sharing.
It sure is. I even said Jungian, didn't I?
Yeah, Jungian. Zippity zoppity. Okay, well, I guess that does it. Do you want to sign off? I'm going to say from Salt Lake, I'm John Madsen, and live long and prosper.
All right, from Honolulu, this is J.R. Fillmore, and peace out. Yeah, one more episode and recap. So also, I'm at the point where John, I drank too much water, so I'm just going to go to the bathroom. I haven't stopped recording, but that's why that's not near the microphone, so no one can hear.
Okay, fine. Wait, are you taking the phone to the bathroom with you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I know.